Welcome to the next episode of HR Mavericks. I'm Garrett Justice, and today I'm joined by Wendy Kelly, who's the owner and HR consultant at Kelly's HR Services out in Florida. Wendy, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me today, Garrett.
Well, thank you so much for joining. It's so great to have you, and I'm really excited to dive into our topic and really just unpack all of that wealth of HR knowledge that you have. We know that you have a lot of it because you've been helping contribute for our team to our HR encyclopedia we've been building out, helping us write articles and share a lot of that knowledge. So again, super excited to dive into this and extract some of that knowledge. But before we do, tell our listeners a little bit more about your career background and what your company does.
All righty, sure. So I'm Wendy, of course, and I have been in human resources for over 10 years. I specialize in the healthcare and educational arena. I love all things HR. I started Kelly's HR Services about 2013, primarily consulting small businesses within the area of South Florida. My primary focus is project management, those implementation of HRIS systems and policy and procedure creations for small businesses. I typically work with organizations who are small enough not to quite have an HR team as of yet, and we kind of build out their HR practices.
That's awesome. And before you started your own business, you actually worked as an HR director in the healthcare, education, nonprofit spaces. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so great. So we are excited to tap into that kind of wealth of HR knowledge and experience that you have today. And as you and I discussed, what do we talk about? We kind of have this idea of, there was a couple of topics thrown around, but one of them was employee well-being, and specifically around how improving employee well-being can help these small businesses build healthier businesses. And so I guess just to start us off and kind of set the stage, why don't you share a little bit more about what employee well-being means to you? How do you define that?
So for me, employee well-being consists of one's physical state, mental state, and of course, their social well-being. It's the holistic approach to the workplace, I think, and just having a healthy work environment that encompasses that for your employees.
So why do you think then that organizations should focus on employee well-being?
It's your bottom line. Employee well-being is a big part of the organization's return on investment. Unhealthy employees, dissatisfied employees lead to costly outcomes, higher turnovers, less productivity. So I think organizations most definitely should be focused on an employee's well-being.
So Wendy, a question for you then is, I have noticed that a focus on employee well-being and employee experience is a trend that we've seen, especially the last few years in the HR space. More and more companies are talking about it. And there've been some big HR industry experts and leaders that are saying, HR is turning into really a focus on employee well-being and employee experience. So why do you think it is that we're seeing this trend of companies talk about and focus more on holistic employee well-being?
I think the start of COVID has actually opened the eyes to employers, particularly in the mental health arena. And by focusing on the employee well-being, companies are able to achieve not only their needs, but the needs of their employees that are both physical, social, and emotional. And also, it creates a work environment that ensures your employees can thrive as well as your business.
Yeah. And I think that ties back into exactly what you were saying before, right? Like there's a real connection between employee well-being and the bottom line of the company, right? And as well as the top line, revenue and profit and everything that your business is generating, it ties directly to those employees. But I guess to caveat that a little bit, I'm curious, are there certain types of businesses where you feel like employee well-being is more important? So are there businesses in certain industries where maybe it might not matter as much? I know I'm asking the HR consultant here, so your answer might be, no, it doesn't. But I'm curious, in your experience, are there businesses that should or shouldn't focus on this as much as others?
I don't think that there's businesses that should or shouldn't focus. I think all organizations should focus on employee well-being, because you have different cultures. There's cultures within an organization. And so to just choose one particular industry or choose one particular business, I think it does the employees a disservice at other organizations. So in my opinion, I do believe that all organizations should be focused on employees' well-being.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that we've noticed at Eddie is small businesses, especially local businesses that might serve a local community. They struggle sometimes to really prioritize and focus on this employee well-being. I mean, you talked about the types of companies that you often work with, small companies that might not have a dedicated HR team. So for these small businesses that might not have a dedicated HR team, or maybe they only have a solo person who's wearing all of those HR hats. What tips do you have for building an employee well-being program, especially for those small companies where it's everyone's wearing so many hats, and it's hard to get all of that stuff done that they need to?
There's so many things that organizations can do. I would say the first thing is to just ask your employees, what is it that they need? And that simple question can provide you a wealth of information. The second thing is to just make the work environment more comfortable. For example, natural lighting, it increases your vitamin D, improves your mood. So that would also help. Providing a work-life balance. What I found is that more employees are looking for that work-life balance. They want that flexibility to be able to they want that flexibility to be able to do their task and have time with their families. And so I would say those would be my recommendations.
So starts with asking your employees on, and what should companies be asking them really on? What do you need? What makes you happy? On all of it?
All of it. What is it that you need? How can I support you? How are you feeling today? What do you prefer? Do you prefer, flexible work environment? Do you want to be in the office? Those types of questions, and just simply having a conversation, getting to know your employees will definitely drive your well-being program.
I love it. It's such a simple tip, but it's so important. And so often companies forget about it, or we think we know what employees want because we work in a small company, but really just asking them and recording those responses in a way to help you prioritize them is so key. So first you have ask, and then the next is just make the work environment more comfortable. Mm-hmm. What about companies that have frontline employees that aren't necessarily in an office? What types of things can businesses do to make that work environment more comfortable, like you said?
Again, those conversations with those employees. What is it that they need? Do they have the resources that they need to do their jobs? I think first line employees are more than willing to share, having worked in healthcare, their needs that will help them truck through.
Oh, I love it. I think that's absolutely right. Do you have any examples you can share of other companies you've worked with, or maybe your own experience in the past where a focus on well-being led to some positive outcomes or positive feedback from employees?
I've worked with organizations that have implemented a well-being program, and we have seen some positive feedback. The camaraderie, being able to, those friendly competitions, staff seem to love those, and that seems to be a great team building type exercise. So particularly building around those wellness programs have been great for me.
I love it. So tell us a little bit more about an example of what that well-being program might look like. So it starts with asking employees, making sure that work environment is more comfortable, but give us some more examples of what an official employee well-being program might look like.
So there you can utilize technology. There are different platforms that you can engage employees with, having conversations, providing healthy tips. Of course, there are those friendly competitions like the walking competitions, the cooking shows. I've hosted a cooking show at a facility that I worked at, where we had staff come in, we had a chef come in and kind of demo the cooking show of having a healthy eating lifestyle, excuse me. And so just some of those tips, I would say.
I love it. So you can really get creative in terms of, tailoring that program to the needs of what your employees voice in that survey as you ask them what their needs are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm a huge champion of having the conversation with your staff because they're the ones that are going to tell you what it is that they actually need and want. And so they're your biggest resource as to how to build out your program.
I love it. Well, Wendy, this has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate these tips that you shared with us today. As we get ready to wrap up here, you know that there's a question that I always like to ask all of our guests that we have on here. And that's really comes from one of our beliefs at our company, Eddie. And it's that we believe that building a healthy business is one of the most charitable things you can do if you can do it in the right way, because you have the ability to impact the lives of your employees and their families and friends and community and so many different people in a positive way. So, in your opinion, what's the quote unquote right way to build a healthy business today?
Start off with having the logo or slogan or whatever you have as a people first model, putting your people first.
And again, it doesn't matter what industry you're in or what size of company you're at. Start there. Start with your people, and
Yeah,
that's where you're going to be healthy and successful. Is that right?
absolutely. Mhm.
I love it. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today. If there are listeners that want to get in contact with you or ask follow up questions, what's the best way for them to do that?
I would say Twitter. I am a huge Twitter fan. And so that would be the best way to follow me is on Twitter.
Awesome. And we will link to Wendy's Twitter in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about writing anything down or looking for it. You can find the link right there. So, Wendy, thanks again so much for taking the time to spend with us today and sharing your insights. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.